reality is being believed into being through our consciousness, through the agency of our consciousness. Certainly we can never know what reality separate from our consciousness is.
Well, I don't think we would ever sacrifice if we didn't believe that reality was opaque to our beliefs, because we sacrifice because we believe in the possibility of a better future being brought into reality by our actions. And that actually seems to work. I mean, it's quite remarkable. We can imagine something, we can strategize toward it, and it generally it manifests itself well enough so that we don't stop doing that. And it's quite remarkable that that's the case.
On that note, I hate to break this up because we're getting going.
Whoa! Drops a fucking bomb again to start the episode off. I fucking love dropping bombs, baby. Two of my favorite people to watch. I know I say that a lot. Like, I say that about Frederick Xavier and Birds. You know, I got many, but these two men, it was weird too. Like, I've been watching Peterson. Okay, well, not anytime recently, but let's say 3 months ago, 2 months ago, maybe even a month ago, I was watching nothing but Peterson. Well, and Robert Seffer. So I get my philosophy on with Peterson, and I'd get a little bit of mythos about spirituality, trying to dig into like the mythos and the ancient history, if you will, to Robert Seffer. But like, let's say 2 months ago, up until not that long ago, that's what I was doing. And then recently, I've been just, in the last month, I'd say more than anything, I would be watching Frederick Xavier, and I'd be watching Russel Brand. Once again, spirituality straight from Prater, and Russell would give you a little kind of spiritual context to profound or important things happening today, ideas that are happening in current day and age. So, which then, when I put on Peterson's channel the day before yesterday, 2 days ago, Monday, I saw a new clip of him, his daughter, and Brand all in the same show. What? Was it a teaser? Like, what is this? So I watched the 15-minute clip, and I watched the 1-minute clip that are on Jordan Peterson's channel. I was like, holy fuck. So then I fucking searched it in YouTube. Sure enough, on his daughter's podcast, YouTube channel, her channel, there it is, the whole fucking thing. And I was stoked. I was like, oh my god. Like, I've been not fighting, it's like, I was getting what I needed from the guys that I just mentioned. But it's like, you know, I wanted something that I knew was going to get me going. You know what I mean? Things that we're watching were okay. I was deriving meaning and thoughts from it to make videos and shit like that. So that's all good. That's all I can really ask, and that's all I want. But then, when I saw that, I was like, wow. And within this, I'd say at least 4 or 5 that I can think of right now off the top of my head of ideas and topics that... Sorry, my window's too fucking loud. Ideas and topics that I want to explore. That one being the first one. So, yeah. But, seriously, you should go check it out. I'm going to play a few clips and parts from it and then discuss them. But I'm not going to play the whole thing. So, right now I'm fucking falling asleep at the wheel, so I really need to fucking put some tunes on, try to make a caffeine drink while I'm driving, and just fucking truck on and try to get there, but this is sketchy. But I'll be on breaks or after work to finish this video up. See you guys then. Oh, right. No. I'm not even smoking shit. Fucking cheese popcorn, but fucking my day up. I love that shit. So for anybody who's worried, I made it to work. Oh, fuck, wrong one. Shit. Alright. Made it to work. But, knows if I'm going to make it home, maybe. No, I shouldn't put that shit out there in the universe. I know better than that. There's no emotion in that. That's the difference, right? That's the trick. something like that a lot, like an affirmation, then it has the potentiality to become manifest. But if you want it to manifest it fast, then you have to do that in a ritual setting or put at least emotion into it. Feel it, like as if it's real. Then it may happen. But I didn't say that a lot, like an affirmation, nor did I put emotion into it, nor have I done it in a ritual setting. So, I'm okay. I'll be okay. Anyway, so, the first part, the bomb that got dropped, I couldn't even get into it because whatever, but I might play that part again, but it's like the ending of the show. That's why she says, as much as I hate to do this, just cutting them off because like they reached their time. So instead of that, I'm going to play a clip from earlier on. But, first I want to discuss a few things about this entire video, this entire podcast, this entire whatever the fuck it is, okay? First of all, it's amazing. Everybody should watch it. And it doesn't, hit many topics that are going to, make you a better person necessarily. But there's a lot of good, helpful hints in there. Helpful topics, the things they talk about. Like the thing I played basically was Peterson, and obviously we can infer and come to the conclusion that Russel Brand believes in manifesting your reality to a certain degree. Now he might not know, he knows, but he will discuss specifics on how he thinks and knows how this shit comes into being. But we know that. When it comes to Jordan Peterson, I've told you guys many times that every time I make an episode, not every time, but most of the time I make an episode about him, that there's magic throughout his information. And sometimes he's very explicit about it, like words have power. You're literally speaking yourself into manifestation. These are things that he said in university to his university students. So, but it's never been as clear as just what you heard right now, where he says you can sacrifice, you can do something, you can visualize the future, take steps towards that, and then it will literally manifest what you visualize, more or less. And that is magic in a nutshell, baby. And, obviously the magic I do is a little different, because I go to my altar, or I make a sigil, or I make a candle, but nonetheless, I visualize what I want to happen, put emotion into it as if it's already happened. I speak in the present tense. I give sacrifices to the gods. Sometimes I have to sacrifice things myself. Like, I need a good future. I want to get a promotion. I want to start doing the brick laying part of my job, or the masonry part of my job. Well, I'm going to need to go buy some tools. I might need to go to school and learn I might have to learn under an apprentice. I'm going to have to give up some of my time. I'm going to have to learn some shit, right? Well, that's a sacrifice. And it's not the same sacrifice as the one that I give, a candle and incense to a god, or a little bit of rum to a goddess or a god, or whatever the case may be. It's a different sacrifice, but it's the same concept. You're giving something of yourself that is worth something to something higher than yourself. Whether that's a god or a goddess, or simply your time. Your time is the most valuable thing you have. And you have to put things on hold. You're going to have to realize that, well, I want a good future, so I have to work this crappy job until I save up enough money so I can work for this future. So you're sacrificing the present moment. You know what I mean? Or you can go look for a job that pays a little bit better, but you're ultimately not happy, which is a different kind of sacrifice that's really doesn't have as good a return, because it's not as good of a sacrifice. It's not as good as a choice either, So that's just a little bit about what he said, but I want to get into that more in depth. Now, when they close out, Russell says a few things. He ends up having a thought right as they say that, and he has to get that out. And then mickeala and Jordan talk for a bit about interview with Russell. And Jordan talks about how fast his brain is, gives him a compliment. There's a lot more to that, so I'm going to play that at the end, because there's not a whole lot to discuss on that, because to go over how they describe the magical process, it's just kind of like, well, it's kind of redundant at this point, because I've explained how magic works many times. I explained how the magic I do, how I perform it. I've explained step by step. I showed a little bit of it. There's not much more I can go over there. And these people are just literally saying how they think magic tends to work. So for me to play it and go over it and then tell you that it's accurate, I mean, that's a little redundant. Nonetheless, when I play it, something will come to mind that I need to talk about that's related to that, and from there, I will blow someone's mind with whatever I have to say. But first, let's get to one of the most profound things. I think Peterson says this is the first time he gets all emotional in here. Now there are other times where he's way more emotional. Sometimes there's good emotions, sometimes there's bad emotions. This one's a good emotion one, but some of them are bad emotion ones. Like he's sad that his health has been sacrificed and whatever else. It just is what it is. But so I'm gonna try to get that clip lined up and play that one for you now. That's maybe a few minutes, but I mean you're not gonna know. It's gonna just play. But anyways, I'm gonna get that set up, and then I'll come back and chime, baby. It's prime time for chime time. I don't even know. It's rhyme to my prime time chiming. Holy fuck, I'm on my grinding. That didn't make sense, but whatever. It's all good. I like to rhyme, bitches. Anyways, fuck, I'm getting tired again. I hate this. It's so hard to drive to and from work whenever the way up of bonus is, the way back of bonus is. Like, fuck, man. I don't know what to do. I'm gonna have to do magic. I'm literally gonna have to do magic to keep myself moving. And I don't mean like, well, actually I do. I can't believe I never thought about this before. And I'm gonna do reject, banish, deny. I reject and banish and deny that I'm falling asleep at the wheel and struggling to stay awake. And I accept that I'm wide awake and gonna make it home free from harm. And free from harming any other automobile, person, car, or animal. And anything else I've forgotten. I will be harm-free, so motive B. Corey LeBlanc. Sorry, it's just part of my process, but anyways. Holy fuck, I'm all over the road. I just passed this motherfucker. My car coming. Yeah, baby, I'm a maniac. No. Anyways, I'm gonna go find that clip.
Go deeper than this too. One of the things you point out in the book is that when you allow or ask or invite someone to be your mentor, you also allow them to manifest that element of them that's most mentor-like. And they can do that independently to some degree of their other flaws. Just like when you're a parent, a father, you can act paternally as a figure of authority, even though you are by no means a perfect figure of authority. The child still needs you to be the best authority figure that you can be, despite your flaws, and you will manifest that. But that's also not false, because the ideal that we're all chasing, we don't know what its ultimate reality is. If you have an instinct towards further development, let's say, what that means is that there's something about you that could be greater than it currently is. And we don't know the limits to what that currently greater could be. And that's where the idea of mentorship, let's say, shades into something like religious worship, because I suppose if you think about the Christian world, the ultimate mentor is Christ. And you could say that being a Christian, or you could say that being a psychologist. And if you said it being a psychologist, you would say, well, it's by definition that the ultimate mentor is Christ. And what Christianity has been, as it unfolds itself over the last 2,000 years, is an attempt to engage all of the people within that belief system in a dialogue about what that ideal actually constitutes. And there's tradition that feeds into that, the biblical stories and the corpus of tradition that goes along with that. But all of it is a collective attempt to specify that ideal so that people can use it as a target to further their development. And that's not delusional. That furthering of development is unbelievably useful practically.
Yes. And forgive me, because I have a response question once again, and I want to ensure that mickeala, who surely has had a lifetime of tolerating this kind of business, her father citing young passers-by, I would like to say, when Edinger in his analysis of William Blake's engravings from the book of Job, says, like of the passage where Yahweh shows the behemoth and the Leviathan to Job and says, look upon the Leviathan and the behemoth that I have made as I made thee. Edinger, in his analysis, says that Yahweh is saying to Job here that all potentiality is held in Yahweh. It is beyond good and evil. How does this transition between an Old Testament version of God that requires of us to become good, that God itself or himself or herself is also good, how does this idea, this interpretation of our relationship with God, this Old Testament which places this sort of obligation that sort of punishes Job for his phatic impersonation of worship, how does that evolve into the Christian idea of Christ as the perfect mentor, Christ as the perfect
Why
emblem?
don't you ask a difficult question?
Gee, I fucking absolutely love that. Why don't you ask a difficult question? Russel Brand, my fucking man, thinking what everybody else is thinking, puts it in a way that I don't think anybody could. Like, I pride myself in being able to talk pretty intelligently. I couldn't fucking hold a candle to Russel Brand. Not yet, anyways, one of these days. And even Peterson can be left in awe by Russell Brand and laugh. Russell Brand, like, I remember seeing one of the first interviews. He's like, well, there's this old saying that, you know, goes for kids and goes for like old people in the old folks home. Like the nurses say to the old folks people that don't do anything for any of the people in the old folks home that they can't do for themselves. And right away, Russell Brand, his mind's always going. He's so fast the way he thinks. His wife's probably a comedian and a writer and an actor, but I'm probably really good at improv. But he's like, oh, they can't steal their own money, right? And then you just see Peterson crack up. You know, I love that part. It's amazing. And just like with this too, like, and then you see Peterson, you know, returning that favor almost. Like, why don't you ask a hard question? Meaning, that is a ridiculously hard question. And then even after, you'll see it, because I'll let it finish, but even after you see it, he's like, Peterson is like, holy shit, Russell, like, what a question. Like, it literally takes his energy away to answer that question. And then at the end, when he talks to his daughter, mickeala, about, you know, going off on tangents, being able to come back in and piece everything all together, which is the one thing that is part of that first clip I showed you, but I didn't show it all to you. One of the things I'm going to talk about, because that's one of the things I love doing. It's one of my favorite parts about making videos, is whenever you go off on a tangent on something that you weren't going to talk about, but you somehow tie it back into the original thing you were talking about. And he talks about how you have all these pieces up in the air, and, you know, sometimes you can lose that, because you see me lose it all the time. Like, oh, fuck, what was I talking about? Oh, fuck, what was I talking about? You know, I lose it. But some days, I feel like I'm brilliant because I can put it all together. And not in a Russel Brand way, and not in a Jordan Peterson way, or anybody else who does it remarkably, spontaneously, or spectacularly well. But in the same sense, I know exactly what they're talking about at that point. And I guess I'll comment more on that later. But right now, like, that question is huge, okay? So, in case it was hard to understand or not positive, the book of Job, okay? Job, jovial, sometimes another name for Jupiter, but let's just leave that aside for now. And the faith of Job, the faith of Jupiter, Jupiter has faith, like crazy, okay? That's why the Sephiroth of whichever one it is for Jupiter on the Tree of Life has to do with faith. And it's the reason you can manifest magic without having to do all the other shit. If you have complete faith in what you think is going to happen and take place, and you need not think about it again, and you put enough energy into it, of course, to create it on the astral, or impress it on your subconscious mind, whichever one of those metaphors you want to use. Both the same in my book, and just two different ways of looking at the same thing. But, fuck, your eyes are closed again. Good thing I'm almost home. But, so, that's where that comes from. That's where Job, Jupiter, that's all out from there. But anyways, so for anybody who's unfamiliar, the book of Job is the guy, he's got undoubted faith. uncrushable faith, just profound faith for either his gods or God. It's unclear to me because there's different versions of it in the Bibles, in different Bibles, but they're all fairly similar. It's just like, was it God? Was he a pagan? Or is it only Yahweh? Anyways, that being said, I hate falling asleep. That being said, God has a bet with the devil, and the devil has a bet with God. Now, this present time, I can't recall who initiates it. And the devil, meaning adversary, God's adversary comes up, or is talking with God and asking, saying that, I bet you I can get Job to turn against you. And God's like, no fucking way. There's no way he's going to turn against me. He's a good fucking blah, 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 blah. So they basically gamble. And I've had a whole episode about this. And I used it as the premise for Christianity being kind of fucked. But now I think I have a better understanding of why that story is like pretty profound. But yeah, in a manner of speaking, these two guys are gambling over Job. And they put Job through trials and tribulations, and God shoots everything but the kitchen sink at the poor fucking cocksucker. And Job just keeps trucking on like it's nothing. And it's amazing, you know? And more than that, I think what Russell's one of the things that Russell was kind of hinting at or got at was that he, God of the Old Testament be more wrathful, or I'll fuck you up if you're not doing this shit right. I'll kill 7 of your family members if you kill one of these family members, and then 7 of theirs, and 7 of theirs, and 7 of theirs. Alright. I'm at the mall right now buying my daughters a squishy. Well, me and my wife are. My wife's in there with the daughters, so. I'm a little more awake. I took a little nap until it was time to wake up and buy squishies. Anyways, so we continue going. So, God, Satan make a deal, and I think I fucked up talking about it. It's been a while since I read it. Satan tests him. God tests him. I think they both test him, but it depends on where you read it, because some people take the Satan part out, but I can't fucking remember for the life of me, you know? And, like, mickeala will say, because of her opiate use, sometimes it makes things hard to remember, so maybe it's the same thing for me. Who knows? I've taken opiates for an extended amount of time and prescribed Suboxone for an extended amount of time, so who knows? But I said they shoot everything at him, shoot everything, including the kitchen sink at him. Whether it's Satan or it's God, because it's very clear that God made Satan. Satan's not an entity without God. God created Satan. It's his own entity. Whether you think of the whole fall from heaven story, Satan's prerogative or not, but it's like God should have known better. God can see everything, he knows everything that's going to happen, so he should have known that was going to happen, and maybe that was the plan. Maybe he needed Satan to fall to be the adversary. But that's regardless in the Job story. So, but I guess what I think Russell's trying to get at is we go from the Job story where God is making bets with Satan to test his followers' faith in him, okay, and fuck with them to the point of like something happens to his wife, something happens to his kids. I mean, it's not just like petty things like lose a job, lose a toe, which is petty, but I mean, I'd rather lose a toe than any one of my family members. I'd gladly give up both my thumbs and my nutsack than the livers of my family members. I don't say that lightly, but you know what I mean? So, here comes my family members back now. But, so the point is that God in that Bible in the Old Testament was pretty fucking brutal. And the one in the New Testament isn't, so why does that, how do you justify that transformation?
Well, you know, Jung talks about this a fair bit in answer to Job. And that's a very difficult book to summarize, and it's also a very terrifying book, but the upshot of it is essentially something like this, which is that whatever God is, the best element of him can plausibly be brought forth as a consequence of the manifestation of what's best in us. And that might be the willingness to sacrifice and the willingness to trust and the courage to love your neighbor, the courage to love your enemy. And this is a profound question. It's like, would reality shine a more benevolent face upon us if we were all as good as we could be? And that's the Christian idea. And I can't see that idea is wrong. Now, and I think certainly Jung interpreted the story of Job in that light, and he believed that Job sort of set God back on his heels, so to speak, by being a more moral agent in some sense than God himself was. But underneath all that was this notion that if you acted as if God was love, if you believed that, and that would be manifest in your perceptions and your actions, that would invite the deity of love into existence. And that's true. You know that when you interact with people with love, and there's a tremendous courage in that, it makes the world a better place. And we don't know how deep that reaches. No, it certainly reaches as deep as humanity itself. And is there something transcendently real about it beyond that? Who knows? Who knows? That's a far enough target for anyone, as far as I'm concerned. That's a hell of a question, Russell.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here, just like, yep, that was...
All right, I'll probably have to listen to it again to get the full flavor of this, because this is after Peterson's comment to Russel Brand's question, which is one hell of a question. And more than anything, I think this is probably the most important thing in this fucking interview. Even more important than the beginning part where they talk about magic. Mickeala Peterson says at a certain point, hopefully I recorded it and I'll put it on here if I did, and if not, I'll find it. But she's like, I believe we make our own reality. Okay, this is not what I think is most important. I'm just recapping a few things that I think are important, but not as important as what I'm about to talk about. But she says, I think we make our own reality. It's the only thing that makes sense. And normally the simplest solution is probably the one that is the solution or the reason. And then it was either before or after what Peterson just said when she said that. We know Russel Brand's opinion on that is similar. Not necessarily knows how, or he won't explain how he thinks it happens, but I mean, I think he does. But anyways, point is that is very important what they're talking about, okay? It's not as important what Peterson says in this. And he says the reason that Jung, his book, Understanding Job, or whatever it was, this is a terrifying book. I didn't read that one. I thought I read almost all Jung's book, but I never read that book, so I don't know. I should read that book. I think I'm going to read that book. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is there's something to this. You can ask my wife, but you won't, because my wife doesn't come on here. But she does have social media. She's got her own little business going to on the side where she's selling bath stuff. Maybe I should plug that once in a while. There's already somebody else I'm supposed to be plugging to. Fuck, I promised I'd plug her stuff, and but I forgot about it. Fuck, man. Anyways, I got so much to do and not enough time to do it. It's insane. But anyways, so when I was watching this the other night, I watched it the night it came out, and then when my wife started falling asleep on the couch, I changed her TV show. She's watching NCIS anyways, what the fuck. So I changed her show and I put that on. And after that part was said, I was over and over again, what am I not getting out of that? What am I not understanding? I'm like, yeah, okay. There's some attract likes in there. There's some, what you think about, you bring about. If you're, if you're good, if you are love, because he says you invite the deity of love into your life, basically. If you're bad, then God's bad. If you're good, then God's good. So depending on us, the collective, God is what we fucking feel and emotionally. I'm just saying, okay, I got all that, I hear all that, I see all that, but there's something else here that's more than that. The thing that makes him emotional isn't just what I just said. There's something more to it. I still don't know if I completely have it put together yet, but I'm still deciphering it. Because Peterson believes in Christianity to a certain extent. And he doesn't believe in the Bible as a literal thing, as history. He does mark history beginning somewhere after Noah's Ark, I think he says. But nonetheless, he still doesn't think it's completely literal. But he does believe in the Christian faith. For him to say that and have that emotional response, I'm not basing stuff on his emotional responses and like, okay, this programming can make you get emotional. So, but sometimes, depending on how you are and how you train, I mean, you can use your emotional responses to let you guide you to certain things. And that's what I kind of do with mine. But I'll leave that aside for now. I'll make a video on that one of these days to explain that further. Wow, what a bum. Fucking women. Anyways, sorry. I love my wife to death. My wife's ass is actually better than that ass. But just the ass is just so tight in the jeans. It's like, look at me, like screaming at us. But anyways, you can't tell me that's fucking comfortable to wear something that fucking tight. You want people looking for your ass. But anyways, here's another one. Like, fuck, man. Anyways, okay, focus. So, there's something more to this that I'm not understanding, or I'm not getting completely. But it's a work in progress, because there's more to it than just like what I said so far. Like, but nonetheless, that's what he says. And in a nutshell, it is, what Young says is that the God of the Old Testament is basically what reflected the people of the time. So whether you take it literal or figuratively, the book, okay, like metaphor, mythical, okay, we know right before Noah, what would have been the time where the Enoch, the books of Enoch would have been, with the Nephilim fucking shit up, with the archangels coming down and fucking shit up. So, in a sense, what Peterson is saying is the God of the Old Testament is all wrathful and fucking people shit up because, well, not only are the people on earth fucking shit up, like the Tower of Babel, although that's kind of God's fault. Like, I mean, they got so high, close up, trying to become like the God, when God decides to make them all speak different languages, it fucks them right up. And then, they don't get any higher, close to heaven, almost like a jealous God again. But, which is kind of to Peterson's point, what he says here, or at least Young's point. I am a jealous God, thou shalt not have other gods before me. Okay, so somebody wrote this Bible. This Bible, God is coming out through this Bible. So if God is jealous, well, this person is jealous. This person didn't want the people. That's what he's saying in a nutshell, is depending on all of us, depending on how we are acting, depending on what we are doing, we manifest what God is. God isn't a separate entity that behaves in a way that is different from us. God is an entity that behaves depending on us. It's kind of what I think he's getting at, and I'm trying to piece this together with you guys, because I can't fucking figure it out completely, but I think I'm on the right track. So, God is this entity that depends on how we are at the time. And so the reason why the God of the Old Testament is not as loving as the other one is because after the Old Testament, the New Testament, the Romans are in control. The Romans are in control. They're doing their thing. They have their Roman gods and deities and all that, but they've conquered the world, and everybody's living in relative peace. Okay. Now, I'm just using the story version. I'm not using history right now. I'm using the story version of the Bible. I'm not using history, because this is the story we're talking about. We're trying to figure out the story, because the story is meant to teach us something. This story is a compilation of a bunch of stories meant to teach us something, overwhelmingly, I think. Anyways, so they are all. The Jews are being oppressed a little bit, but they're free to practice religion, and, they got to pay taxes and all that. But, I mean, I don't think that's always necessarily a bad thing. To have a governmental structure that takes care of society, and all you have to do is pay a little bit of taxes. I mean, we pay more than a little bit. I'm not saying that. Trust me. Trust me. I don't want to get a bunch of fucking messages like, you think taxes are good? That's just because your wife's a government worker, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, maybe. But nonetheless, okay, these guys are living in relative whatever, pretty good, and they're all kind of organized to, you know, we have a good structure going here. We don't have a bunch of murders and deaths and all that. You know, the first humans, there's no more fall, we're out to Eden. Everything is kind of starting to become more structured. There's no more Nephilim, there's no more archangels coming down. God's finally got his shit together, and people are starting to get their shit together. Yeah, there's oppression, but there's always going to be oppression. But when there's less oppression and there's more good shit happening, that's a good day. That's a good year. That's a good century, okay? Kind of like what's going on now. People argue that, you know, coronavirus, all this shit is so bad, but it's like, man, the people that lived during the 19th century, the people that lived during the 20th century with the wars, okay, and all the fucking killing, I mean, those are arguably way worse than what we're going through. Hold on a second, I want to see if all right, so all that's to say is, so everything's going good. So then once everything's going good, then we have the archetypal story where Jesus comes down and is love. And he's down on the earth to try to get people to be love, to act love, to, you know, love your neighbor, love your enemy, all that fucking fun shit, okay? That's so fucking hard to do, but, you know, Jesus makes it look easy. He's there to affect the world and say, no, God is not like the God of the Old Testament. He is love, just like I'm love, and we are love. And so the reason, what I derive from what Peterson and Brand have worked out together there in this thing is that Old Testament, things are rough, things are tough. When things are rough and tough, you need a fucking rough and tough God. When things are fucking good, golden, and everything's going, you know, according to somewhat a plan, and you can love each other, and you're relatively free, minus, you know, you can complain about taxes and all that, but it's like, it is finding an excuse to whine. But when things are going good, then you have a God that is more loving. When things aren't going so good, well, then you have a God that's, you know, less loving. So, anyway, I'm going to continue on with the rest of this, and figure the fucking rest of this shit out with you. And, you know, as I go on, this will clear up for me. I'll try to connect the other parts to it as well. So let's keep going, shall we?
Became well known when I was relatively older. You know, it happened after I was 55, and it's strange. It's strange to understand that the conversation that we're having, you know, is going to be watched and listened to by some hundreds of thousands of people, or perhaps more than that over time. It's uncanny in some sense, and surreal.
I just don't understand those numbers, so it doesn't, like, I can't understand those numbers.
Yeah, well,
so.
you've grown up with the reality of YouTube, for example. Like, you've grown up in a world where you could be a TV producer as well as a TV consumer. I mean, when I grew up, when I was your age, even a bit younger than that, when I was in my teen years, we had 2 TV channels. It wasn't long before that, you know, the United States only had 3. And certainly there was never any conceptualization that any particular individual could become a TV station or a media center. And so it's a very foreign reality for me. And I guess I do have some sense of the numbers, perhaps, because I've done so many live talks, and I've seen very large crowds. And in any case, the reason that mickeala and I do this, in large part, is because, well, we're curious. We wanted to see how it would go, but we're also seeing if we enjoy it. And I'm happy to be here doing something like this with her. It's a real privilege. It goes back to, you know, having children. I don't even have a joke. I don't even have a joke right now. I suppose, too, this has been enhanced by my ill health in recent years, but I always feel that it's a privilege to spend time with my children. And I have some sense of how fast time goes. You know, I've always had a very acute sense of the finitude of existence. And this is a good hint for people who have children, but with regards to your family members at all, is and I have some sense of how fast time goes. You know, I've always had a very acute sense of the finitude of existence. And this is a good hint for people who have children, but with regards to your family members at all is don't take it for granted. You know, every second you get that isn't painful, you should cherish.
Yes.
God, I'm maudlin.
Oh, you came up with a joke. That's good.
I felt like I took it as an expression of your love for one another, just with the content that I'd watched, and I imagine that would be the motivation, given the trials that you've endured with regard to your health, and then this is of course entirely speculative. That what preceded it in the rather unique, certainly unparalleled cultural position that you, Jordan, had occupied leading up to the period of abstinence and its accompanying medical complexity. And I know that, you know, but like sort of Tammy, and I know that mickeala, I know that sort of health issues have been quite prevalent, because I'm familiar with you and I'm familiar with your work, and I sensed that it was a sort of a culminative expression of love and gratitude and warmth, and an opportunity for you both to be together. And it's very heartening to hear that it's that. With regards to sort of inquiry about the nature of sort of public life, for me, the older I get, the more I recognise it was an unsophisticated attempt, as perhaps all early grasps at the Grail must be, of trying to heal the seminal wound of seeking some kind of value, of trying to impose some kind of myth in a mythless world, some pursuit, something of value to chase after, and then increasingly discovering as various points in the journey were arrived at that it couldn't fulfill me. Now, I was sort of comparatively old also, like I wasn't like 16, I was like 30 when I sort of became well known, when I was starting to make films in America and things like that. And I always felt that there were, I'm sure numerous, but at least two sort of streams running. One, this sort of like a need for validation and approval on a scale that could only indeed be provided by YouTube numbers. mickeala, I'd need to see that speedometer clocking up the 100,000, 200,000. There can never be enough, never a high enough number. This is that lies at the root perhaps of all addiction, this constant requirement for more, and no way of healing that wound, not materially at least.
But some of that's even actually healthy, Russell. I mean, one of the things that we do constantly is to evaluate our worth by the responses of others. And
all right, I'm going to cut you off right there, Peterson, real fast, buddy. But so initially, in the beginning of this, before this, holy shit. Anyways, prior to this, Peterson wanted to ask Russell about his fame, and I think how he does it, because he's still getting, Peterson says he's been pretty well known now for a little bit, and happened to him in his late 50s or early 50s, one of those two, and he was going to ask Russell about that. So this is why Russell gets into that a little bit. And also prior to that, mickeala said, I don't understand the numbers, and she says something about comparing herself to her father's numbers, and she's getting up there herself as well and whatnot, and how, you know, seeing those numbers always rise, and going on and check it out and see how they grow and grow and grow. And I mean, I know that I do the same thing. I always tell everybody, I don't care if you like, I don't care if you subscribe, if you feel the need to, do it. But it's like, I'm at 81 subscribers now, and I'm fucking grateful for every last one of you who felt the need to subscribe to me. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. But it's like, he's going to get into something pretty important about this, and I'll explain that part after, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of context of what this is about. I didn't want to just play the whole thing like I did with Frater's video. This is a brand new fucking podcast, so just take it all and put it all on my channel. No, I'd rather people go to mickeala's page and see it themselves, but if you don't want to, and you just want to derive the lessons that I might be able to help provide, then I'll pick a few things that I can talk about and try to conclude something from it. But this part's it's a little bit about your path and your passion and your purpose. To me, anyways, this is what it feels like to me. So, like, when it comes to what I'm doing here on YouTube and all that, I'm trying to provide value and trying to explain what I've done and what's happened to me through spirituality and recording myself and putting these videos and my podcast out there. Now, I'll let him finish, and then I'll continue on instead of spilling the beans now.
You know, if that's all you do, that's a mistake. And if you're doing it in a false way, that's also a mistake, because then you're gaining as a consequence of doing something that isn't real. But like, the person who cares nothing for what anyone else thinks is actually a psychopath, not a saint. And so it's easy for that mechanism gaining as a consequence of doing something that isn't real. But like, the person who cares nothing for what anyone else thinks is actually a psychopath, not a saint. And so it's easy for that mechanism to go astray in a world that's so dominated by social media. Because...
All right, so before he goes on to our topic, I want to compare this to myself and other things. So, for example, if you are... Because we'll keep it in the realm of social media and YouTube. I mean, this goes on multiple levels. But in the realm of social media and YouTube, if you are you know, like me, you're making something about spirituality. Well, if my overall goal is to help people, okay, then I think I fall in that category that he says that, you know, it's not out of balance. So he's like, because people that don't care about what other people think can become a psychopath. And, you know, you say that from time to time. I don't care what people fucking think. Whatever, fuck them. But, you know, everybody does to a certain extent. Some people care a little bit less about what people think. Some people care a little bit more. As for me, like, I'm putting the spiritual material out here to try to help advance people who are on a similar path as me, and others getting into it and trying to figure out what path might be for them. But I don't want my friends and family to see this unless they're searching for it. So, for example, I'm not going to go out and tell all my friends, like my last video I made, or two videos ago, or whatever it was, I made a video, and in that video I referenced to an older video, because I just realized that two of my friends found out I have this channel, and that I'm into witchcraft, and they're worried. And then the video I put on that video was when my mother and my sister, about a year ago maybe or more, found out that I was also doing this stuff, and I was talking about it. So I'm not doing this to become popular and get people to like me, but that doesn't mean just because I'm putting this out here on a social media platform that has a potential to make money. In fact, my podcast does make money. So as much as I'm not doing it for those reasons, there's an aspect of it, and it comes with it, that has a like button, it calculates how many views you get, how many subscribers you get, and when those things are in place, it's a way to judge how popular you are, if you're doing well. If you're not doing well, people like it, people don't like it. So it's a good way. It's gonna come along with the territory, regardless of how much I say, which obviously I'm not being completely honest with myself if I always say, well, it doesn't matter if you subscribe or you like. I'm saying that to be nice, because I want everybody to subscribe and I want everybody to like. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to keep pounding that in every time in every video, because I don't like when I hear people do that. So I'm not going to do that same thing that I don't like. But I want people to do that. And this is what he's talking about. I like everybody else, they're all pointing out the fact that they are human, and they guide those things, they look at those things, they measure those things just like everybody else. You know, you might think Russel Brand probably doesn't care about who's watching his videos or if he's got a popular account, but he says, no, I'm like everybody else. I see those numbers going up, and I'm happy, but at the same time, it's like, man, wouldn't it be great to get to this? And when I get to that number, I want to get higher and higher and higher and higher. And I'm the same way, I'm no different. But the way Peterson explains it, he's like, if you're doing it for a selfish reason, simply just, if you're putting, let's say, it's conspiracy material, you're putting out conspiracy material that is ridiculous and you don't even believe it, but you're putting it out there because it simply gets people to like your shit. Well, you're doing that for the wrong fucking reason. And in my opinion, for a while you might be successful, but after a certain amount of time you will not be. Alright, sorry about that. I forgot a bag in the car with some stuff for the girls. Bubbles. Bunch of Easter crap here. Celebrating the pagan part of the Easter, baby. Easter egg hunt. Woohoo! Anyways, so yeah, in my opinion, you might disagree. You might say, well, that conspiracy stuff is out there and it's doing well. And to me, that plays the role and the part of what I said before, how certain conspiracy material, I think, is important to people's waking up, learning truth, getting into truth, all these different movements to start a type of spirituality. So those serve a reason, even though the people don't know it. But if the person is slowly just doing it for their selfish reasons and not getting awakened from it, and people aren't getting that service from it, I don't think they're going to do well. Because there's many people out there who try making conspiracy shit and it doesn't go anywhere. Buddy Andre, the guy I talk about, who was on the corner 2 days ago with his little fucking, had to be somewhere between 4 and 6 year olds, on the corner of a busy street, preaching the word of God with a fucking megaphone. Like, really? But anyways, he tried making conspiracy stuff and it didn't get very popular. I mean, I subscribed to his channel back then because I saw in him that there's the potential for him to be able to eventually switch it up. So I figured if I subscribe, then he gets happy and keeps making this. He may eventually get to a place where he will wake up. But that did not happen. He woke up to Christianity, but the wrong type. Not the transformative type that Peterson's talking about. When Peterson says Christianity is supposed to be so that everybody who's in that belief system can have a dialogue and try to bring in the deity of God, the transformation from that wrathful God from the Old Testament to the God of love in the New Testament, to use that as a precursor, as a guideline for our life, to show us that things are bad, this is the kind of God we're going to have. If things are good, this is the kind of God we're going to have. You know, that is what Peterson believes in my estimation, to a certain degree, is kind of what he's trying to get at, versus what Andre believes in. He believes in those things as literal fucking beings, not even deities, but beings that the devil's going to kill you, and he's causing all this harm, and God's up there just waiting for you to pick him, and then you're saved, you don't have to worry about anything. It's like, fuck, really? Because that's really so far from the truth in my point of view, in my eyes, and in my journey. Like, it's uncanny and remarkable that people can actually believe that. And that, but it's not their fault, because that belief system holds them so tight that unless something extreme happens, they can't even break away from that to look at some of the scientific data that proves without a shadow of a doubt that shit's false. But even if they were to look at it with that belief system, they're going to say that's fake, that's this, that's that. It's just, you know what I mean? They have every excuse under the sun to be able to justify how that's not real. And it's just ridiculous. But regardless of all that, the point I'm trying to get at is, I think I'm trying to do this for the most noble reason, though I'm still a human and I'm flawed, and I'm going to do and make mistakes and watch the numbers and still want to be accepted for this by people of like mind, okay? Everybody who's in ceremonial magic or witchcraft who view my channel, I hope will subscribe or like my shit so that I am accepted by them, so that I am part of that community, quote unquote. But I don't want to be recognized by my peers, by my family for this, because they are not ready. I mean, most of them probably aren't ready. Some of them might be, but aren't ready for that type of transformation yet, because everybody might have a different transformation. Who am I to say that they're not ready for this transformation? I don't know what the fuck they're ready for. But my point is that maybe they're higher than me in many ways, and then I'm higher than them in other ways. The point I'm trying to get at is, I think what he said is true. So Russell is pointing it out like it's like an addiction to put out content, and it is. And I put out content because you'll hear Peterson talk about it at the end, after the interview's done. It's just him and his daughter talking. You'll hear him say how fun it is to go off on a tangent and bring it back in. And remember the thread that brought you there, and then even though you're breaking off of that thread, and then you manage to take, well, you broke off of that thread, you went on a different tangent because it's related somehow, but it's not the same, and then bring it back to the same. That idea, that is more addictive than watching the numbers climb, is making those videos. But then after you do that, you want people to see you and notice you for that. So then when you see the numbers climb, you realize that people saw that. More than that, if you see someone comment, I don't have a ton of comments, but I got a few that say, wow, I drive with everything you said, or I enjoy everything you said is exactly what I was thinking, or how are you not more popular, or I've had many different comments like that, not like an abundance of them, but you know, count those kind of comments probably on two hands. But for me, that's a lot, because they only have 80 subscribers, and not everybody feels the need to put a comment, and some of them weren't even subscribers. Like, well, some of that's from my podcast as well, where I think I only have like 8 followers on Spreaker, but that's irrelevant, because that I go by the downloads, you know. But nonetheless, even though people are downloading and listening to it, the part of me that wants to be liked for it and known for it looks at that follower thing, and I say it doesn't matter to me, because if it mattered to me, well, then that's a really low number, right? And that's kind of how our mind works. It's like, well, if I have a low number, I'll say it doesn't matter to me, and then I save face. And if I have a really high number, well, then it doesn't matter because I'm being liked. So I can say, oh, well, it's not about that, but I really appreciate it. You know what I mean? So either way, we're going to play it off like that. And if you pretend that that doesn't matter, then people might think you're a psychopath. Because if you really, truly don't care what other people think about you, well, then that's what happens. And I don't mean psychopath in the fact, in the way like the movies portray psychopath, but as the actual psychological term for the word. Like sociopath means feeling one of the meanings. I don't know all of them, but I know it's like someone who can't feel emotion. That's why sociopaths can eventually become psychopaths. They don't feel emotion like we do, but like other people do, right? But anyways, so I'm not going to keep going into that because I'm going to keep going off on tangents because I'm not really following that thread at all. And I'm going to get to some of the more cooler stuff to talk about. So let's do that.
You know, when before social media, if you were a teenager, it was really important how your peers responded to you. And it should have been, because that's part of apprenticeship. You're socializing yourself against the group at that point, and their opinion should matter. You use them as a proxy for your parents to escape from your parents. It's crucial, even though it can go too far. But now that's elevated to such an immense degree. It's like pornography or cocaine. Both pornography harnesses the sexual drive, and drugs like cocaine hijack the incentive reward, the pleasure circuit, and they're unbelievably powerful. And it's not surprising that you'd be addicted to watching the numbers rack up. I mean, I can see that and experience it as well. It's almost impossible to avoid wanting to see the numbers climb. And to some degree, that's egotistical, and it can really lead you astray. But to some degree, it's just the natural workings of a mechanism that is actually there in part to keep you socially acceptable and sane.
This potency that you describe with cocaine and pornography, it's difficult to locate comparably potent influences when it comes to more positive attributes, alongside my craving for attention, etc., and perhaps warped ordinary anthropological drives for acceptance, was always a vocational urgency, a devotion, an untapped or at least misguided devotion to that was always present. And I feel that sort of many of the things that I've heard you previously discuss chime with this, if they do not express this exactly. The problem of not having a shared public myth is that everything is up for grabs for being anointed with that status without a clear depiction of God as ideals, God as shared standards. Then why not just pursue fame? Why not just pursue coke if nothing means anything anyway? And it's only sort of more recently with in my case, a sort of a spiritual program through the 12 steps, through mentorship, through the obligations that having people that rely on me for their own recovery, as well as being a father. These, I wouldn't call them secondary, I'm sure they're primary characteristics, but they were secondary of my own behaviour, have been brought to the forefront, have been realised, actuated. And like that, to your point earlier about sort of mentorship is not that they just exhibit the divine and that it's only relevant in so much as it may activate the divinity or sublime energy in the mentee. I see it as beyond that. I see it somehow as a kind of symbiosis, a kind of osmosis, a kind of that it isn't ultimately the optimistic view of life, one of oneness, one of love, that's separate, that we are not ultimately separate. Therefore, there is recourse to the universal. There is a possibility of me in admiring another person or adoring another person, imbibing and taking on these attributes. If the ultimate reality is separation, separateness, I sometimes...
I think that takes us back to the discussion about the so-called Christian transformation of the idea of God. I've had Jewish friends of mine point out that the God of the Old Testament gets a bad rap from Christians to some degree, and that there's a lot more love there than you might presume if you viewed the New Testament as a transformation of the Old Testament God into the God of love. But we'll leave that aside. I think it's a valid point, but we'll leave that aside. If you're mentored in a particular direction, well, here's how you might conceive of it. Is there something that all mentors share in common? Well, you would say so because they're all in the category mentors. And then you might say that, well, whatever all mentors share in common is the pattern of the divine. Again, that's almost by definition. Now, then there's a deeper question, which is, okay, if what all mentors share in common is the pattern of the divine, is that a real pattern? And the answer to that to some degree is, well, you'll find that out by acting it out. And it seems to me that the answer to that has to be yes. I mean, if we're adapted to the world, and if we pursue the fullest extent of the possibilities of our adaptation through mentorship, then, and if that improves the quality of our life, then it seems that whatever it is that mentorship is pushing towards is real insofar as it works in the world. Now, does that mean it's materially real or objectively real? I don't think that reality is bound completely by the categories of objective and subjective. I don't think that captures the entire essence of reality. And so, but I don't believe that our instinct towards mentorship is a delusion. I don't believe that our religious instinct is a delusion either, even though all instincts can go astray.
Yes.
All right. I don't know how much I've recorded of this next part here. I shut my lights on. This next part, this look begin, I don't know how much of it it's recorded, so I might have to add to it, but hopefully not. But this is where I think mickeala eventually chimes in and says that she believes that we're creating a reality. This is where Russel Brand uses the Taoist beliefs in his perspective, from his point of view, from what he gathers from it, to explain how he thinks we bring things into being. And so I just want to point that out. So if anybody's kind of like getting lost or like, well, where's this going? Well, here's a good part. So listen up.
It became well known when I was relatively older. You know, it happened after I was 55, and it's strange. It's strange to understand that the conversation that we're having, you know, is going to be watched and listened to by some hundreds of thousands of people, or perhaps more than that over time. It's uncanny in some sense and surreal.
I just don't understand those numbers, so it doesn't, like, I can't understand those numbers.
Yeah, well, so. And you've grown up with the reality of YouTube, for example. Like, you've grown up in a world where you could be a TV producer as well as a TV consumer. I mean, when I grew up, when I was your age, even a bit younger than that, when I was in my teen years, we had 2 TV channels. It wasn't long before that, you know, the United States only had 3. And certainly there was never any conceptualization that any particular individual could become a TV station or a media center. And so it's a very foreign reality for me. And I guess I do have some sense of the numbers, perhaps, because I've done so many live talks, and I've seen very large crowds. And in any case, the reason that mickeala and I do this, in large part, is because, well, we're curious. We wanted to see how it would go, but we're also seeing if we enjoy it. And I'm happy to be here doing something like this with her. It's a real privilege. It goes back to, you know, having children. I don't even have a joke. I don't even have a joke right now. I suppose, too, this has been enhanced by my ill health in recent years, but I always feel that it's a privilege to spend time with my children. And I have some sense of how fast time goes. I've always had a very acute sense of the finitude of existence. And this is a good hint for people who have children, but with regards to your family members at all, is and I have some sense of how fast time goes. I've always had a very acute sense of the finitude of existence. And this is a good hint for people who have children, but with regards to your family members at all, is don't take it for granted. Every second you get that isn't painful, you should cherish.
Yes.
God, I'm maudlin.
Oh, you came up with a joke. That's good.
I felt like I took it as an expression of your love for one another, just with the content that I'd watched, and I imagine that would be the motivation, given the trials that you've endured with regard to your health, and then this is of course entirely speculative. That what preceded it in the rather unique, certainly unparalleled cultural position that you, Jordan, had occupied leading up to the period of abstinence and its accompanying medical complexity. And I know that, but like sort of Tammy, and I know that mickeala, I know that sort of health issues have been quite prevalent because I'm familiar with you and I'm familiar with your work. And I sensed that it was a sort of a culminative expression of love and gratitude and warmth and an opportunity for you both to be together, and it's very heartening to hear that it's that. With regard to your sort of inquiry about the nature of sort of public life, for me, the older I get, the more I recognise it was an unsophisticated attempt, as perhaps all early grasps at the Grail must be, of trying to heal the seminal wound of seeking some kind of value, of trying to impose some kind of myth in a mythless world, some pursuit, something of value to chase after, and then increasingly discovering as various points in the journey were arrived at that it couldn't fulfill me. Now, I was sort of comparatively old also, like, I wasn't like 16, I was like 30 when I sort of became well known, and when I started to make films in America and things like that. And I always felt that there were, I'm sure numerous, but at least two sort of streams running. One, this sort of like a need for validation and approval on a scale that could only indeed be provided by YouTube numbers. mickeala, I'd need to see that speedometer clocking up the 100,000, 200,000. There can never be enough, never a high enough number. This is the lies at the root.
Saying
that this idea of Christianity,
keep left onto Trans-Canada Highway Central,
if we live
Ontario
in God's
Route
light,
W
or we
toward
aspire
Ottawa.
to God's light, or if we embody God's love, then that this is beneficial. I was thinking how, as a paradigm, it's comparable to the Taoist idea that you are bringing the path into being as you walk it, that you are like that reality is interacting with your consciousness, that your belief, your perception, the manner in which you behold and enact your life influences life, becomes life, is life. And in that tradition, and let me tell you, I know barely anything about it, it's sort of presented in a more Gnostic way. It's sort of somewhat more opaque, it's more minimal, as one would expect, housed as it is within that culture. But the central message appears to be the same, that there is no objective, that these categories of objective and subjective perhaps have to be simultaneously held, perhaps opposed, perhaps are interchangeable, that reality is being believed into being through our consciousness, through the agency of our consciousness. Certainly we can never know what reality separate from our consciousness is.
Well, I don't think we would ever sacrifice if we didn't believe that reality was opaque to our beliefs, because we sacrifice because
that these categories of objective reality is being believed into being through our consciousness, through the agency of our consciousness. Certainly we can never know what reality separate from our consciousness is.
Well, I don't think we would ever sacrifice if we didn't believe that reality was opaque to our beliefs, because we sacrifice because we believe in the possibility of a better future being brought into reality by our actions. And that actually seems to work. I mean, it's quite remarkable. We can imagine something, we can strategize toward it, and it generally it manifests itself well enough so that we don't stop doing that. And it's quite remarkable that that's the case.
On that note, I hate to break this up because we're getting going, but I know that we have a heart out. So, Russel Brand, thank you so much for talking to us.
Oh my God, are we done already?
I know, it was fast. But that was fun. Thank you very much. Where can people watching find you?
I have a podcast called Under the Skin, which is on Luminary. I have a book coming out on Audible, which I'd love to talk to you about, further about the finding the sacred in the everyday. With a rather grand title, Revelation. You'll be pleased to hear, like where I'm just talking about that I personally can't live without sacredness present in my ordinary life, and how I find it in a post-secular world. Like when you were just talking just then, sorry to interrupt my own hard out, but I was thinking that perhaps much of the dissatisfaction, polemicism and fragmentation that we're currently experiencing is a result of people not feeling that agency, not feeling like this like the ability that you say to manifest your reality through the practice of certain principles. It feels like that we're having a sort of an externally imposed nihilism, that you can't influence reality, that you can't impact reality. These swathes of disillusioned, disenfranchised, dismissed people. It just occurred to me when you were talking just then.
I think you can influence reality. That's what I've decided. It's too weird. It doesn't make any sense otherwise. It's the simplest explanation.
Oh, snap. Mickeala just dropped it. Reality is made by us. We do our reality. That's awesome. I love it. All right, let's finish up.
So when is that book coming out, Russell?
I think it's in March, which might be so far into the future as not to exist in the sort of social space that we're currently occupying.
In March. How long have you worked on it?
I worked in it for a couple of years, sort of like leading up to and during the pandemic. Do we still have March? Is March still a thing? Do we have equinoxes now, or equini? What is reality now?
Well, hopefully we'll return to something more approximating normal reality when this pandemic ceases to exist. God willing.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy to see you looking so well, and to see you both together as a family, as a father and a daughter. And it's very comforting for me as a father of two daughters to see you working together well, and to see so many of the principles that you have espoused and beautifully articulated, Jordan, manifest in you, Mickeala. It's a real privilege to meet you both. Thank you.
Thank you, Russel Brand.
Very good to see you again, Russell.
I hope I get to see you. I've got your email. I'll be in touch. I've got both your emails. Stay in touch.
You have a remarkable capacity to dig into things.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's a beautiful compliment from you.
Yeah, well, it's quite striking. I remember the last couple of times we spoke, I was struck exactly the same way, is that you have a very fast mind, and it goes down a long ways.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's a wonderful compliment. If it were earlier in the day and I'd made the giddy life choices to have children in my 20s, I would stay up now with pornography on another screen and cocaine on the back of my hand, chatting into the long hours. But perhaps if those were the choices I made, I wouldn't find myself in this esteemed company.
Well, have a good night.
On that note.
Yeah, have a good night.
Good
God
night.
bless you both.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Thank you.
And see that right there, that simple joke that he made, that's funny. That, maybe anybody could have made it. But that's a testament to what Peterson said. They got all... When Russel Brand gives the compliment to Jordan and Mickeala both, but mainly to Jordan, saying, good to see you. I love seeing you two work together. And all the principles you teach about on stage, I can actually see it because I met Mickeala and I see them manifest in your daughter. So you're not just talking out your ass. Like, that's a fucking sick compliment. Boom. Period. Peterson, and you can tell he's like, it hit him. He didn't change his face. Nothing changed on him, but I saw it. You can see it. Like, oh. So he had to dish out a compliment, so that's what he does. You have a remarkable mind, and it goes way deep down, and you think so fast. And I remember last time I met with you, I was left in the same thing, meaning he was left the same way, like his energy was drained because of the questions and how Russell tests. Now, Russell's a great guy because when he does his podcast, when he does his videos, he's teaching, he's bringing things up, but he's asking questions, and he's teaching by asking these questions that people are thinking about, right? When he goes against or with, or, because I made a podcast, Brand versus Peterson a while back. So when he goes up against someone like Peterson, even though they're not going up against each other, they're not battling, but he knows and respects and understands that Peterson knows more than him. Psychologically, historically, whatever the case, he's older. He respects his fucking elders. Doesn't matter that he's a celebrity. Doesn't matter that he makes more money. It doesn't matter that he's more popular, whatever the case may be, okay? He respects it. It's one of the things, like, it strikes me so, he's a humble man. You know, anybody who judges Russell Brand for his past, his drugs, his whatever, is somebody who's closed and simple-minded, I'd say, because the man has flipped his life around. If you were to go watch that first podcast, Peterson with Jordan Peterson on Russell Brand's fucking podcast, if you were to go watch that, okay, you would see a very different Russell Brand, but still a calmer version than the actor and the past drug addict. You would see it. And then now you see him even more calm. And mickeala says it later on that he thinks that he was going easy on them. And you know, I agree. I think he was, too. He could have fucking fired because he does have a very fast mind. And that joke was a very good demonstration of how he kept the thread. His mind was still attached to the previous conversations they had. They talked about cocaine. They talked about pornography. They talked about having kids in your 20s. They talked about the time. So he brought that all together in one joke. Meaning, if it was earlier in the fucking day, and I made the life choices in my 20s, I'd stay up and had kids in my 20s, I'd be up all night with pornography on one, cocaine on the back of my hand, and I'd be talking to you through all the hours of the night. So he brought that all together because he was able to keep the thread, and his mind is so quick he can make a joke out of it. Not just bring it up, not just talk about it. Like, because that's what I do. I just bring them up and talk about it. If I can maintain the thread and bring them all together, he can do that plus turn it into a funny joke. And it's just amazing. And I'm humbled by somebody like Russell Brand. And he's somebody that I want to aspire to be like. Not an actor, not a comedian, but just someone who is an ex-addict, who's extremely intelligent and knows how much he doesn't know and always has this hunger for learning more. And because he knows he doesn't know everything, and because he's always asking questions to get down to the bottom, he is smart. He's so fucking smart. Even Peterson says it. He's so intelligent, and it shows. Just because he's asking questions doesn't make him look stupid at all. You know, go to the video, Frater, the video I did before this, Frater versus the Michael from MGTOW, okay? Frater Xavier comes off better than Michael does, in my opinion, regardless of whose beliefs you're on the side with. And it's because, no offense to Michael, but he's a little closed-minded and he believes in his belief system, and that's it. Nothing can go past that. And anything past that he can explain, it's demons or it's this or it's that. And when it comes to Frater, he doesn't do that. He tries to explain things in a way using facts and knowledge of science. Same way that Peterson and Brand do. They're not closed-minded, even though that, you know, Peterson might have the same beliefs to a certain extent, or maybe in the same category as someone like Michael. But he's not closed-minded like that, and neither is Russell Brand. And they just show their intelligence. Whereas Michael could be an intelligent guy, but the way he comes off in the video is not very intelligent at all. Just closed-minded as fuck and not smart, you know? So it's just something I really wanted to point out. There was so much in there, like whenever she pointed out, I believe we can create a reality. And what Russell said was so important, that the fact that people don't believe we can create a reality, because creating a reality has been made new age and pseudoscience-y and all that. But when you hear how Peterson put it earlier, how you can visualize what you want to happen in your life and then make the according sacrifices and then, you know, change your thoughts to be in line with that instead of thinking that you'll never make it there. And he's going to say something when he's talking to Mickeala that is his version of reject, banish, deny, and then accept. And I'm going to play that for you so you can hear it before we close out this video. Just so you know that he does a form of that when he's writing, and probably in all things. But the way he explains how to manifest the reality is a way that most people say, well, no, that makes sense. But it's not manifesting reality, that's just living your life. It's like, yeah, but people that don't do that are either in meaningless jobs without end and or on the system or welfare or don't think they deserve it probably. So this is not just an insult to them. To insult to them is because they probably don't feel like they deserve anything good in their life. And if you're one of those people, listen to me, you do deserve it. You do fucking deserve it. So start trying because you can have it. We can all have what we want. But anyways, you hear that, and most people will say, okay, well, that's logical and makes sense. So it's not all pseudoscience-y. It's like, yes and no. It's like it can hit the realms of what we call magic, which is just life. But you can implement the simple techniques of just always focusing and thinking about your goal as much as possible throughout the day when you do. And it's like breathing. You can think about breathing a bunch of times throughout your day, but you're not going to be able to focus on it the whole fucking time. And the times that you let go are the times where things are going to start working out for you because you let it go. But you were putting energy into that idea up until a certain point, and then you get busy doing something, you let it go, and then, things are going to present themselves to you. And then that's going to make you start thinking about it again. So you're going to start thinking about it, and it's doing like, this is almost like the affirmation way you're always thinking about it. It's like thinking about saying your affirmation over and over and over and over again until you let it go, and you start doing something else, and then those ideas will start presenting themselves to you. You accept them, and then you banish away the ones that don't mean anything to you, or the ones that are trying to stop you, the little devils in your head telling you to do something. I'm going to get to that part right now, actually, so you can see what I mean by when I said Peterson has a form of reject, banish, deny. I just needed to really promote and show how brilliant Russel Brand is, and it's one of the reasons why he's one of the people I'm watching the most now, because once again, you want to change your life, find 5 people in your immediate circle that you want to be like. It could be successful friends, family members, whatever. If quarantine stops you from being able to do that, then find 5 people on YouTube that you want to be like, whether it's their job, their style, the way they talk, their success, whatever it is. And you watch them over and over again. Watch all the fun content they have and find more people like them. But the more you surround yourself by what you want to become, you will embody those things and become that. But anyways, so that's just a shout out to Russell. Anyway, I really appreciate Russel Brand, his channel, his books, and everything he's doing. I'm definitely going to buy his book as soon as I can, which isn't right now, but it will be soon enough. And then once I do, I won't read it to everybody or anything like that because I want people to go support him if they can. But I will talk about it whenever I do. But because, I could have talked about 12 Rules for Life that I read by Jordan Peterson or Maps to Meaning, which I've also read by Jordan Peterson, but he talks about it already quite a bit. And, Maps to Meaning was a hard book. 12 Rules of Life was a lot easier and a good segue. That's the one I started with. But regardless, let's get to the rest of the podcast. I'll let them give Russell some compliments and talk about him a bit. And then I'll go until I play that part by the Reject, Banish, Deny, and that'll probably be it after I chime in after.
So we just finished talking to Russel Brand.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
I told you I watched Rebirth, which is his comedy special from 2018 yesterday. I wanted to ask him, but there wasn't time. I wanted to ask him a couple of questions. One of them is how he's so verbally fluent. So I can just ask you that. Like, is it he's just really smart? Or is it because he's read a lot and watched a lot? Or is he just naturally like that?
He's really smart.
So then the rest of us that aren't like that, or we're just never going to be that?
He's really smart. He's also extremely high in openness, that creativity trait. And so people who are high in openness can see patterns, but a lot of that's you're born with that. It can be hurt and ruined.
How would that, by trauma? It's like PTSD type of thing.
Malnourishment.
Oh, just brain development, you mean?
Yeah, but a lot of that's the way he is. He was born like that. I've met a number of people like that. Camille Pellier's like that.
Ah, it's very, very sharp.
I just gotta say something fast there. So when I first watched it, I'm like, fuck, I hope Russell doesn't watch this after, like, malnourishment is how he got his intelligence. Like, that's kind of rude. But then, I was thinking about it, and fuck, I'm not nowhere near anything like Russell, but I see some of the stuff that way my mind works, and semi sees patterns kind of the way he does, and whatever the case is. And when he says malnourishment, I don't know if that's doing cocaine at a young age makes you not eat, and doing different amphetamines, speed, Ritalin, and shit like that. Same thing. And it's a funny thing, but if you go on the internet anytime right now, you look up intermittent fasting and different fasting things, which some people might think is malnourishment. You're not nourishing yourself. You're not eating. But doctors and a lot of people will say it's good for your brain. It's actually really good to increase brain activity, brain flow, blood to the brain, blah, blah, blah. So many things. It helps detox. So just to throw that out there, if you're ever thinking about doing any kind of brain development, your brain's always developing. But just like everything else in your body, when you're younger, it's developing to a certain point and then it stops. But your brain can continuously develop, continuously adapts. That's why it's all this, what's the term? Neurolinguistic programming is not the thing I'm thinking of, but it's to form your brain. Anyways, it's like this plastic term for it, to form your brain. I can't fucking think of the term, but that's because your brain can be always formed. It can always be reformed, and something like PTSD can make certain parts of your brain get bigger and other parts of your brain get smaller, which the things that got bigger can reduce in size, but the things that get smaller can never get bigger. I learned that from Peterson as well, just so you know. But and I can't remember the two parts of the brain, but it's just to prove the point that your brain can continuously grow. So if you ever want to start, because he says you're just born with it and all that, but it's like, I think there's some things out there you could do. You'd have to look into intermittent fasting and other ways that helps your brain. And just because by him saying malnourishment, I'm not saying to be anorexic or bulimic, but I've met some anorexic and bulimic women that were super uber intelligent, and they could talk and explain away their disorders in the most intelligent way that it's like, man, okay, because I'm a bullshitter and I know how to lie well too, because of my malnourishment and my drug addict past, I can tell you're lying, but it's damn good and very plausible you're lying. And that's not just to my own horn, because it is what it is. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just want to throw that out there before they get into talking about a little bit more.
Fast,
Ben
right?
Shapiro, although Ben isn't as open as Russell.
Yeah, he's crazily open. He connects ideas from all over the place.
Yeah.
You're pretty open and verbally fluent. Like when I go to your lectures or when I hear you talk, sometimes you'll go off on a tangent and I'll be like, he's gone.
Yeah.
There is no way that whatever he started an hour ago has anything to do with what he's talking about now, and then it'll be like, attach it. You'll just attach it at the end.
That's
like,
fun.
How do you even remember?
That's so fun.
How do you even remember what you're talking about?
It's like if you're listening to a great piece of music, like a Bach concerto, say, Bach will go off on a tangent, and then he'll return to a theme, and it's so satisfying. You hear that goes, bah, and it just flattens you. And it's that ability to make things come together. It's so exciting to be able to do that. And that's one of the reasons I love lecturing, is that I can go out on a tangent, way out, and explore and then think, okay, that comes right back here. And if I'm in good shape, I can do that continually in a lecture, right? Because I can remember the thread and I can go back. But if I'm not in good shape, when my health starts to go, I can't keep all those things.
You can't remember it.
I thought, even when we were talking to Russell, there were times I thought I'd listen to his question, long questioning.
Hard.
And
like most people, like I said, when I went like this, I was like that. I don't know what I was there, and then he said something, and I didn't know where he was going with that, and then I lost it.
Did you lose it, or were you afraid and let yourself lose it?
I don't know what the difference would be.
Well,
between those.
I thought that you didn't give yourself enough credit, and that it was maybe your fear of not being able to understand that made you say that. I mean, did you feel that?
Very father and daughtery there. Like, he's like trying to stick up for her, but she feels like being attacked almost, like the look she gave him, and then the camera after. Like, I don't understand what you mean by that. Just let me say it was over my head, you know, Dad, like, fuck off. And he's like trying to be like, well, no, trying to defend his little girl's honor. Like, my little girl is not stupid. And he doesn't like her doing that. So I understand both of what they're doing here. So I'm probably going to keep playing this part. So I'm just going to fast forward and get to the part where he talks about his writing at home and having to chase the devils out of his head that are continuously telling him that he's not going to have anything to write, blah, 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 blah. And then after he's squashed all those, he can start to write. And the more he does that, the less they came around. Which, if you listen to Frederick Xavier's beginning, when he talks about reject, banish, deny, it's exactly the same in a different context. And this is why I like the law of fuck. Not the law of fuck. I do like that law, the law of gender. But the law of fucking... it's not a comparison. Anyways, it'll come to me eventually. I'm still trying to think about it while I'm just umming away, and the ums aren't helping shit. Anyways, I'll get to it.
And I'm not very old, right? I'm 29. I'm almost 30. But I'm only experiencing the juggling act now because I was too sick before.
Well, it's so fun to see how many things you can do. You know, and it forces you to get efficient, too, in such an interesting way. Is, you know, you think, well, you shouldn't take on more. And you think, well, no, that's not necessarily true, because as you take on more, you get better at delegating and you get more efficient. And so then you can do more.
Yeah, and it's hard to know when you can't do more. Right?
Well, I kind of learned when I was writing. You know, when I was writing Maps of Meaning, I spent 90 minutes to 3 hours a day on that for about 15 years. And at the same time, I was raising a family. And, you know, although obviously your mom took primary responsibility for the continual childcare, I was around a lot. And I had my job as a professor in my clinical practice and all of that. But you can tell if you're doing too much if you can't sustain it across days. So I would find some days I could write for 5 hours, but then what would happen is the next day I was impaired in my writing, or 2 days later. So you have to push yourself to see what you can iterate across days. And I found that I should never write for more than 3 hours. I wore myself out so that I was stealing energy from the next few days. It produced less productivity.
I really think that's something worth knowing, stealing energy for the next day. I think we all know that when it comes to anything physical. You know, you work overtime one day. You know, most places here now in Canada won't let you work more than 4 hours a day. Not all places, obviously, but a lot of places that are regular, unionized or government, or, you know, just want... You know, some guys don't care, a lot of construction won't care, but there's a lot of things that won't let you do more than 4 hours a day, and or like an 8-hour day on the weekend. It has to equal out to something. But so you'll know that you do 2 or 3 12-hour days, and then have to do 3 more 8-hour days. But you're gonna be tired for those 8-hour days. You know, blame it on whatever you want, but it's like you're borrowing energy from the next day that you don't have yet. It's one way of looking at it. I'm not saying it's what exactly it is, but it's definitely a good metaphor for what it could be. But when it comes to writing and thinking, I think it works similarly. I've had days where I've tried to do really long podcasts, thinking and talking, and I've done it. But then, for a fucking couple weeks after I've done this day, and I always chalked it up to, I'm in a bad mood, I'm depressed, something's going on. But, you know, sometimes the simplest answer could be the most accurate answer. But anyways, let's keep going. We're almost at the part.
And that actually made them more productive.
I've heard that. I've also heard that if you allow particularly productive people to work from home, that they're more productive.
I often work from home.
Yeah.
And although there were conditions for that, I had to be a junkyard dog. This is a good piece of advice for any of you out there who want to write or to pursue anything that's your own interest, is you have to cordon off a space and a time for that. And then you have to guard that. I always thought the metaphor that struck me was junkyard dog. Like I was a junkyard dog when I was guarding my time to write. And when your mom would come in, I'd snap at her. Or you kids, it was like, don't bother me. I'm writing. And the reason for that was, you know, I might have had 30 ideas in my head that I was trying to
that's
explore.
Where I've got, okay.
And then if someone came in and interrupted me, all
everything.
that would fall. And it'd be like an hour of thinking, and I had all these plates up in the air, and then they would all fall. But so, yes, you can work effectively.
Oh, shit. No light. So, here comes. Listen up to this part. The little devils are thoughts, or the thought forms, depending on where you are in your spiritual journey, if you're doing mine or not. But reject, banish, deny. And it's useful. Trust me.
But it's difficult to cordon off your time, partly because if you're writing particularly, you're doing something that might not work, like it might not bring any money, you might not be able to sell it. Mm-hmm. It's a long-term game, and there are short-term emergencies that are always calling out for your attention.
Yeah, that appear to be more important than whatever you're doing, because whatever you're doing isn't showing any benefit yet.
Yeah, well, that's...
Right, it's just a time suck that has a question mark for the payoff.
Right, exactly. And so, well, you can increase the chance of the payoff if you're actually disciplined and productive. So, I mean, I trained myself to sit down and write every day, and I wrote even when I didn't have anything to say. You know, it would take me 20 minutes. All the little devils in my head would be telling me that I wouldn't be able to think of anything today, that there were other things I should have been doing, that this whole thing was a waste of time, and I'd have to quell all those. And
that's fun.
And then I could write. As I wrote more and more, the amount of time it took to quell those 20 minutes, all the little devils in my head would be telling me that I wouldn't be able to think of anything today, that there were other things I should have been doing, that this whole thing was a waste of time, and I'd have to quell all those. And
that's fun.
And then I could write. As I wrote more and more, the amount of time it took to quell those decreased. And then if I was tired, it would increase again. But I found, and this might be useful for people too, you can force yourself to sit and stare at the damn blank page. If you do that every day, you'll write something. You'll write a paragraph, you'll write 2 paragraphs, you'll write 3 paragraphs, you write a single sentence. If you do that for a couple of years, you have a book. And Hemingway wrote something that was really useful to me too. He said write every day and make that a habit. But he also said, stop when you still have something to say and just make a few notes about what you have to say. Because then the next day you can pick up where you left off. And that was also very useful.
That is
all right. There's a lot there, too, I could get into, but I probably won't. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. His version for writing anyways, how to reject, banish, deny. He was very aware. He even calls them devils to go. I mean, that's Christian, right? But no, I'm not saying he's Christian, but he is. But I'm not saying that. But, you know, all the devils in his head, all the demons, all the things trying to stop him are part of himself. They're part of ourselves. They're our own thought forms that we've created, telling us that we're not going to succeed, we're never going to make money, we're never going to be successful, this is not going to work, you're not going to be able to sustain this, blah, blah, blah. You know, trying to go to the gym, and you're sitting on the couch watching TV getting ready for your gym. It's like, there's a bunch of things here I can do instead. I'm pretty tired. I have to work still tomorrow. Blah, blah, blah. You gotta shut all those motherfuckers up and just go to the fucking gym. You know, reject. It's a form of reject, banish, deny. You know, you're just staring at that page and sitting there while they let them fucking talk, run their fucking mouth. So you guys done yet? Alright, so I'm not taking any of your advice. I'm gonna write now. So I banish all your thoughts, all those thoughts, and I accept that I'm going to fucking write and be a success. Simple as that. You should use that, implement that in your daily life. And whether you're writing or not, or want to be a writer or not, I would still use that advice of writing every day. If you want to become smarter, writing something every day about anything will make you smarter. And at first it'll be about the topic you're writing about, because you'll get to a point you might have to look some stuff up, you'll find something you don't know, and you'll put things together that you've already known, and you'll become deadly smart if you write every day. Yeah, some reading into that, looking shit up, listening to books while you're doing the dishes, and you write after it's new information. I mean, you'll increase your intelligence and wisdom if you put it into practice tenfold within a fairly short amount of time.
Seriously. But anyways, that's enough for today. I'm getting pretty tired, and I hope you enjoyed this. And thank you once again to everybody who does subscribe and likes and comments. I really do appreciate it. So thank you everybody for checking this shit out. Have yourself a great fucking day.